I am Kelly with True Bias. Today I am going to share a really fun hack with you. So if you follow us over on Instagram, you know that we have been focusing on our Nikko pattern all month long, sharing inspiration, doing fun hacks. And today we're going to do a hack over here on YouTube. So the hack that I've always wanted to do for the Nikko but have never done is I've wanted to turn the top views, and that's view A and B. So there is both a sleeved view and a sleeveless view of the Nikko pattern. And I want to turn that into a bodysuit. This works really well for this pattern because it is a fitted pattern. And I often tuck it into high-waisted bottoms. So things like my lander pattern or my Maeve, our newly released Blair skirt. This pattern works really well with those, and if you add a bodysuit, I just feel like it will stay tucked in even better and just give you that really nice, smooth look. So let's talk first of all a little bit about what this is going to look like. So you are going to need your Nikko pattern, so either the paper pattern, or if you prefer a PDF like I do, then you're going to need your PDF printed pattern all printed out. So you only need to print off either view A or B, depending on if you're adding sleeves or not. And for that pattern, you are going to be cutting it off at the length and shorten line, which also happens to be the natural waistline. So what we are going to be doing during this hack is we are going to be attaching a different bottom to the natural waistline of the Nikko. I am going to actually be using a high-waisted pair of underwear. I'm going to be cutting it up, and I'm going to be drafting a pretty simple bodysuit pattern from that I'm going to attach at the natural waistline. Okay, let's go ahead and talk materials that you're going to need. So the first thing that you're obviously going to need is your pattern. So whether that is the paper pattern or the PDF pattern, there's no changes made to the neckband or the sleeves. But once again, for your main front and back, you are going to trim them at the lengthen shorten line, which is also the natural waistline. So after you got your pattern, you are going to need some fabric. I'm using this kind of dusty seafoam colored rib knit. I'll put a link to it in the notes down below, just in case you want to source the same one. You're going to want some coordinating thread. Don't forget your stretch or ballpoint sewing machine needle. It really protects your fabric and makes it so that you do not get holes in it after you sew. You're going to need a little bit of fusible interfacing. So make sure it is pretty light to medium weight. This is going to go at the crotch area of your bodysuit to just give a little more stabilization to your snaps, and so you don't want it too bulky. You are going to need some kind of snap situation. So I use this snap tape. I really like it. I will put an affiliate link for it in the notes. It comes in a few different colors. I have it in both white and black, but essentially it is both the male and the female portions of a snap, and it's attached already to some twill tape. It just makes it a little bit easier, in my opinion. I also don't have like a really nice professional snap setting tool, so I prefer to use this when I can. But if you do have a way to either use a snap setting tool, or if you like to do the hand sew in snaps, you can use those as well. So you're going to need a snap situation. Other than that, you are also going to need some 3/8 inch elastic. So this is going to go around both of your leg openings, so make sure you have enough for that. And last but not least, you're going to need whatever you're going to use to draft the bottom portion of the bodysuit. So for me, it's a pair of high-waisted underwear, but for you, that might be, a swimsuit bottom pattern or a bodysuit pattern, just the bottom section. So make sure you have all of those things ready to go, and then we are going to go ahead and start drafting the bottom portion of the bodysuit. Now the first thing that we need to do is we actually need to separate the front from the back. So I like to find the narrowest part right here along the crotch, and then I am going to cut it right there. Keep in mind that your back rise is longer than the front rise, so it is going to be towards the front of this underwear. I'm also going to cut along the side seams, And then lastly, I find that the elastic along the leg opening makes it so that it's hard to lay this flat when I'm tracing it. So I'm going to go ahead and trim that off, and we will just be adding back in that 3/8 of an inch later when we're drafting our pattern. You could also trim off the elastic at the waist, but since mine is laying so flat, I'm going to skip that. Now do the exact same thing for the back that you just did for the front. Okay, now it is time to go ahead and start drafting our pattern. So take your front piece and you're going to fold it in half along the center front, and then you're going to line that up along the edge of a piece of paper, and then you're going to trace all the way around it. And then we're going to do the exact same thing for the back that we did for the front. Now the back is obviously longer, so I'm going to tape two pieces of paper together first before I trace out my back along the center back folded line. Now we need to add in a little bit of length at the very bottom for the snap closure. So if you're using snap tape like I am, go ahead and measure it. Otherwise, use about 3/4 of an inch, and then you're going to add that to the bottom. The bottom here, I'm doing it to my back, and then the snaps actually overlap. So you're going to take half of that distance and also add that. So in total here, I'm adding maybe a little bit over an inch to the bottom of my front and my back. And then we also need to add back in some seam allowance and fold over along the leg openings. So we're adding in the 3/8 of an inch that we cut off, and then another 3/8 of an inch because we fold under the elastic to finish off our bodysuit. So I am adding in 3/4 of an inch along each of the leg openings. And then you also need to add in a little bit of seam allowance at the side seam. So add in about 3/8 of an inch there, knowing that we might adjust this a little bit more. Go ahead and trace out all of the markings that you just made. Now next up, I do need to make some adjustments for the snap closure. So I'm going to go ahead and trim my snap twill tape here to the exact width that I want it to be, and that's going to be the exact width of the bottom of my bodysuit. So I measured the width and then I divided that in half, and that is going to be the width that I'm going to do here at the bottom of both my front and back bodysuits. You want it to be the same width for a couple inches up, so go ahead and mark that. And then this line that you just marked, you are going to then connect it with the seam allowance marking that you made previously. This will be the new leg opening. Okay, now we need to go ahead and attach this to the top of our Nikko. So starting with the front first, I'm going to line up those center front edges. You'll see here that the bottom section is a little bit thinner than the top section, so I'm just going to kind of meet it in the middle of the distance and then grade between the top and the bottom. And then you can go ahead and trim your Nikko out, and this is going to be your front bodysuit pattern piece. Now we're going to do the exact same thing for the back that we just did for the front. Now I accidentally drafted my bottom section of my bodysuit going the wrong way, so I'm going to have to like flip over my pattern so that they match up. But essentially it is the same method that you used for the front. Okay, there's one more thing that we need to do real quick before we cut out our fabric. So we need to measure both of our leg openings. So first mark the seam allowance on the side, and then you're going to measure the rest of the leg opening minus the seam allowance. I'm using my little curve runner tool here, but you could also just use a measuring tape. Okay, now that we have those two measurements, we're going to do a little bit of math. So you're going to add your front and your back leg openings together. For me, this lands me at about 23.5 inches. And now go ahead and multiply that by 0.10 or 10%. That leaves me at 2 inches, 2.35 inches. And then I'm going to subtract that from my overall leg opening. And that lands me just over 21 inches. And that's what we're going to cut our leg elastic to. So I'm going to cut 2 of those out. So what's going to happen is once we add in this elastic, it's going to give us about 10% stretch around those leg openings. Okay, and so now you're just going to go ahead and cut out your Nikko bodysuit. Once again, the neckband, the arms, all of the other pattern pieces are completely normal, and so you're going to sew up your Nikko according to the original pattern instructions, just leaving the very bottom section untouched. And so it should look something like this now. So the top portion is all the way sewn up, but the bottom portion is left untouched, and we are going to go ahead and finish out the bodysuit section at this point. So the first thing that you're going to need to do is cut out 2 pieces of fusible interfacing that is the same size as your snap tape. If you're not using snap tape, then you just want it to be the width of the bottom of your bodysuit and about 3/4 of an inch tall. And then you're going to fuse those little pieces of interfacing to the very bottom of your bodysuit. So on the front, that is going to be on the right side of the fabric, and then on your back, it is going to be on the wrong side of the fabric. And then we are going to attach our snap tape on top of that fusible. Now, just keep in mind that the female or the any kind of part of the snaps go on the front of your bodysuit, and the outie or the male sections of your snaps go on the back of your bodysuit. And we are going to edge stitch around the outside, the 2 outside edges and the top edges. I like to use a zipper foot when I do this, just so that I can get really close to those edges and also not run into my snaps with my presser foot. Okay, it should look something like this once you've stitched it. Now, the next thing that we need to do is we're going to attach the elastic to our leg openings. So grab one of your elastics and you're going to fold it in half and mark that center marking. And then you're also going to do the same thing to your leg opening so that you can match those 2 up. Now the elastic is going to line up with the cut edge of your leg opening, and it's going to go on the inside or the wrong side of your fabric. So go ahead and match up the center marking of your leg opening and also your elastic, and then pin that in place once again just so that it lines up right along that cut edge on the inside of your bodysuit. And then you're also going to want to match up the ends. I don't go all the way to the end, but go, just inside of that snap tape. If you want, you can add more pins than this, because essentially what we're going to be doing is we're going to be stretching the elastic slightly as we zigzag stitch along that edge, and you want that stretch to be evenly distributed along your entire leg opening. So if you need more pins to do that correctly, then go ahead and go crazy with your pins. And then we're going to go over to our sewing machine and we're going to do a zigzag stitch down the middle of that elastic. And while we're doing that, we're slightly stretching that elastic so that it's flat on top of our bodysuit leg opening. And we are once again going to try to keep the edge of the elastic lined up with the cut edge of the bodysuit. This can be a little bit tricky, especially your very first time to do this. I just recommend going slowly and stopping, as you're sewing, and just relining everything up, making sure once again that the bodysuit stays pretty flat, but you are slightly stretching the elastic on top of it. You also might want to play around just a little bit with your zigzag stitch width and length. I like to go out to about 3 millimeters and also up to about 3 millimeters in length. Okay, it should look something like this when you're done. Don't worry if it's not perfect. This is going to be tucked into a pair of pants or a skirt, so nobody is going to see it. Okay, now to completely finish this leg opening, you are going to fold the elastic up on itself towards the wrong side of the fabric, and then we're going to go back over to our sewing machine, and just like we did before, we are going to do a zigzag stitch right down along the middle of that elastic. You're going to want to slightly pull on the elastic and the leg opening so it's flat while you're sewing it, just to kind of introduce that stretch once again. To keep this at about 3 millimeters width and 3 millimeters length. I also like to do this on the wrong side of the bodysuit. I just feel like I have a little bit more control when I do it that way. But if you prefer, you can also do this from the right side of your bodysuit, just so that it looks a little bit cleaner. Okay, that is what it should look like once it is done. We are getting really close to the end here. We do need to finish out the little snap area at the bottom of the jumpsuit. So you're going to take each of your snap tape and you're going to fold it back upon itself. So for the back, that is folding it right sides together, and for the front, you are folding it wrong sides together, and then you are going to edge stitch along that top edge just to secure the fold in place. Once again, I like to do this on my zipper foot just so that I can get really close to that edge and not hit my snaps. Okay, this is what it should look like after it is sewn. And that really is the end of our bodysuit. So I'm going to turn the whole thing right side out, and then I'm going to go ahead and snap that bottom section up, and this is what our Nikko bodysuit looks like. Okay, and here's our finished Nikko bodysuit. I hope you found this tutorial really helpful. Please let me know if you have any questions down below. If you need to get the Nikko pattern, I will have a link to that below, as well as our other patterns if you are looking for sewing patterns to try. I'm also linking all of the things that I talked about in this video. So if you are looking for one of the things that I mentioned, just check the links in the notes below.